This morning, the Washington Post is reporting that former President Trump improperly took classified and even top secret documents to his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida. As we have previously reported, sources tell CNN the National Archives has asked the Justice Department to investigate Trump's handling of important White House records. Joining us now is the Justice reporter from the Washington Post who helped first report on this story, Matt Zapotosky, and CNN chief legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. Matt, lay out your reporting for us this morning.
Yeah, so we know we've reported over the scope of the last week that the National Archives recovered from Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private residence, 15 boxes of documents. And then we reported that archives officials who recovered these documents, which are government documents, which needed to be handed back to the archive, might have been sensitive. And our latest reporting is that there were actually markings on these documents that indicated they were top secret, or there are other, sort of secure compartmented programs that some people characterize as above top secret, and there were markings on the documents indicating that they were that, and that's really significant. So that means those documents are classified. There weren't markings that indicated they had been declassified. And that sort of raises the stakes for everyone involved here. You guys have reported, we have reported that the National Archives reached out to the Justice Department and asked them to look into this. We know that Justice Department officials are now talking about what to do. These documents are being stored in a secure compartmented information facility that the National Archives controls, and we'll see what happens. It seems like it's growing increasingly likely, though it hasn't happened yet, that the FBI and the Justice Department is going to try to wrap its arms around what happened here.
Has the government reviewed these documents? Do they know, Matt, what all is in them?
That process is still underway. The FBI has not gone, as we understand it, or at least had not gone as of yesterday afternoon, and taken a look at these documents itself. The National Archives folks who retrieved these documents got a look at them. How extensive that is, we don't exactly know. And we also know that the National Archives have said, we are also asking the Trump folks about potential other government documents that they might have. So what it seems like has occurred is that there has been some preliminary look at these documents, but it's not as if the FBI has done a thorough indexing of them, sent them to other agencies that might have a stake in the classified information. So far, the National Archives folks are the ones who've got sort of the best look at these.
So, Jeffrey Toobin, I have a feeling, because I spoke to you like 4 hours ago about this, that you're going to tell me that the intent here matters. But as I throw this question to you, let me read you a quote from Matt's article, which might get to that a little bit. And I think this was overlooked in their reporting. Trump was very secretive about the packing of boxes that were retrieved from Mar-a-Lago last month and did not let other aides, including some of his most senior aides, look at them, according to people close to him. Does that make the plot thicken?
Well, it does. And, this is an important story, but there's a lot more that needs to be found out about it. It's like, who packed these documents? Who directed the people who packed the documents? Who knew what was in the boxes? Now, what complicates this somewhat is that the president himself, when he's president, not ex-president, is in a different position with regard to classified information than anyone else. He has the right to declassify anything he wants. But what he doesn't have is the right to take documents that are relevant to an investigation. That's where the intent question comes in. In all of these stories that have come out over the past week about destroying documents, tearing documents, flushing documents down the toilet, the question is why? Did the president, first of all, did the president really do this, or Donald Trump do it? And did he do it with the intent of keeping these documents from legitimate investigations? That's where he gets into potential legal trouble, is that if he did it to keep them away from Congress or from criminal investigators.
So it can be hard to prove intent, but how much does that help if he personally was secretive about packing the documents and it's clear, look, this is his doing?
Well, again, if he was doing it the whole time, one of the things about Donald Trump is that, he has been secretive his whole life. This is a guy who, as a businessman, didn't use email, didn't text. I mean, and so if he is simply just secretive as a matter of course, that actually helps him legally. But if there is evidence that he says, I didn't want Mueller to see these documents, or I don't want to see the January 6th committee to see these documents, that's a different scenario and more problematic for him. But proving it, as you point out, is a difficult thing. Intent is always difficult to prove.
Let's just look. Let's just look to the significance of this week. We just get dizzy with the number of developments, but just some of the headlines. Washington Post, some Trump records taken to Mar-a-Lago clearly marked as classified. CNN, White House records obtained show no record of calls from Trump in and out. National Archives asked for Justice Department to look into it. Giuliani asking a Michigan prosecutor, turn over your voting machines. The flush papers thing I just talked about with Maggie. January 6th committee subpoenas one-time Trump advisor Peter Navarro. A flurry of activity. The question is, where does it lead us?
Yeah, look, this is going to be a fascinating report when the January 6th committee eventually releases its report. They may do an interim run before the elections happen, but they'll of course have to try to finish it up by the end of the year. They have uncovered a lot of information. They've talked to hundreds of witnesses. They've gotten documents from everyone from Mark Meadows to other people in the White House. And now we know that there were 15 boxes or so that were in Mar-a-Lago that Donald Trump took from the White House, potentially in violation of the Presidential Records Act. Reporting suggests some of this is top secret information. Does that shed any light into what happened on January 6th? So the question ultimately will be, what new information, of course, do they reveal, and what gaps are there? Because even if they do try to subpoena Donald Trump's cell phone records, possibly Donald Trump is going to fight this, as he's known to do. And if he fights this, it could drag out in court, and perhaps there will still be gaps in the information. But undoubtedly, there will be also new information as well.
There are a lot of smart lawyers saying that it's really hard to prove Donald Trump broke the law or to prove the criminal intent of breaking the law. But beyond that, let the Justice Department look at what it looks like. The House Oversight Committee will. If you read this Washington Post reporting, even with documents marked classified, found where they don't belong, prosecutors have a high legal bar to get to criminal charges. Prosecutors have to prove someone intentionally mishandled the material, was grossly negligent in doing so, which can be a steep hurdle in its own right. And Trump, as president, could have unfair latitude to declassify material, potentially raising even bigger challenges against him. So it is hard, although I was reading remarks, one of our producers forwarded them to me earlier from Jonathan Turley, an attorney who often defends Trump or often, says liberals are overreacting, saying that if he took these with him, the second he's not president, he loses that privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you would have all sorts of arguments that, Trump would come up with, that maybe he declassified them before he left. And because that whole process of a president declassifying, he could verbally say, okay, well, I've declassified this. But it's going to be very complicated. And it seems like that happens over and over with Trump. He walks this line where it's like, is that legal? I don't know. But it's the sort of things that are very hard to prove in court. And people get frustrated. People are like, well, how is he able to walk these lines? And it seems like they're finding all this stuff, but he doesn't get in trouble. But it's because a lot of this stuff is norms, and it's stuff that it's very difficult to prove in court. And so that's why he, quote unquote, can get away with things that people feel like, well, how's he doing that?
How's he doing that, and why is he doing that? And the why is an important question. I put it to Maggie. Is he just angry at something, so he rips up whatever he's holding at the moment? Or is he looking at something saying, I do not want this in a file that someone's going to find someday, so now I'm going to rip it up? That we don't know. John Berman on New Day this morning did ask that question of a White House insider.
This is another example of a White House and an administration that just, we had no rules. We followed no rules.
Was it clear to you why he was doing it? Was it a nervous tick, or was it because he wanted them out of circulations and destroyed?
I don't know the answer to that. To be honest with you, I always thought it was a nervous tick. I mean, it was something, he always tore everything up.
Just that, again, the motive, we'll leave it to, investigations to determine, but he just tore everything up. We had no rules. We followed no rules.
Yeah, for those of us that were here and covered the Trump administration, I mean, that, as Aisha said, that's no surprise, right? This president broke rules constantly. And so, but hypocrisy and irony abounds, right? I mean, the entire 2016 election was about whether or not Hillary Clinton, didn't properly use her email or use personal email. And we consistently find out that the former president of the United States used his personal phone, used the personal phones of his staff, tore up documents, flushed them down the toilet, took potentially really highly classified documents to Mar-a-Lago, there is a question about he has the power when he's currently president to declassify some of those documents. Did he do that before taking them? We don't know that. But still, it really looks like he violated the Presidential Records Act. But the big question is, does he actually face any legal peril over it? And right now, it seems unlikely.
Right. His conduct is the most important part of this, but to the hypocrisy part she just raises. Liz Cheney says we're going to have public hearings. You're going to see we're not on a vendetta. We're just going to lay out the facts. But to this idea of so many Republicans who think Hillary Clinton's supposed to be in the middle of her life sentence now for the emails, that's that they ran a campaign on that. Where are they?
Look, I asked a bunch of Republicans about this yesterday, and not surprisingly, most of them downplayed it. One of them, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, said, why aren't we investigating what happened in Afghanistan? Why look at what happened with the former president? But even the critics of Donald Trump, like Mitt Romney, when I asked him about it, he said, along the long list of Donald Trump's sins, this is at the very bottom of the sin list. He pointed to other issues. And of course, Romney voted to convict Donald Trump twice in his impeachment trials. So they're not so worked up, but Democrats on the Hill will try to investigate this.